The Keeper's Last Secret. Chapter 1. Whispers of Dawn. Dawn seeped through the high arching windows of the Dome of Knowledge, casting fractured light across ancient texts and worn stones. Xanthe knelt beside the Knowledge Keeper, her pulse racing in her ears as she focused on the stillness of the sacred space. She traced the Keeper's frail hand, their skin like parchment, a testament to the fading stories of a culture she was desperate to preserve. Each shallow breath from the Keeper counted down the moments, a tether to the wisdom she sought. The air, thick with incense and salt, wrapped around her, urging her to grasp the slipping threads of their shared history before they unraveled completely. Xanthe leaned closer, the Keeper's breath a fragile whisper. "What must I remember?" She pressed, urgency twisting in her gut. The Keeper's eyes fluttered, consciousness dangling like a thread, and Xanthe longed to bring them back. "Speak to me, please." A flicker of recognition sparked in the Keeper's gaze, but it dimmed as shadows flickered within their eyes. Her pulse quickened, fingers brushing against the Keeper's wrist, feeling the echo of life fading beneath her touch. Each pulse resonated with her unvoiced fears. The knowledge lost to silence. She swallowed against the lump in her throat, the weight of her past failures tightening around her chest. A sudden noise, metal clanging, voices raised, shattered the tranquility of the dome. Xanthe's head snapped toward the entrance. The Knowledge Keeper gasped, fleeting awareness igniting their features. "The cave," they muttered, but the moment splintered as Xanthe's focus broke. The urgency of the outside world clawed at her, drowning out the Keeper's words like waves crashing against the shore. Desperation gripped her throat. "No, stay with me." The Keeper's eyelids drooped, their breath faltering. Xanthe pressed a palm to their forehead, feeling the warmth fade beneath her touch. "Don't go, I need you." But the Keeper slipped deeper into unconsciousness, a fragile vessel losing its precious cargo. Panic surged through her veins as she fought against the rising tide of despair. All those moments she hesitated, all those questions left unasked. Now silence filled the dome, loud and oppressive. The Knowledge Keeper's stories hung in the air, intangible threads of culture and wisdom slipping away, lost to the ether. She recoiled, the weight of her failure anchoring her to the ground. The dome felt colder, the incense thickening into a suffocating fog. What had she missed? What would never be told? Xanthe's chest tightened, a knot of regret forming around her heart. The dawn light spilled across the floor. The air inside the Dome of Knowledge thickened, heavy with the urgency of unspoken tales. Xanthe knelt beside the Knowledge Keeper, her fingers entwined with the frail hand that once held the weight of wisdom. Outside, chaos reverberated, starkly contrasting the solemnity of their sanctuary. She drew closer, her heart raced, pounding in her chest, desperate to capture the Keeper's final stories, the threads that wove the fabric of their lost culture. But time slipped through her fingers like sand, and the Keeper's breaths grew shallower, each one a whispered farewell. Would she let this moment define her? Xanthe's gaze flickered to the Knowledge Keeper's fading face, wrinkles etched deep like the lines of an ancient map. "Please," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper, "share your stories. We need them now more than ever." The Keeper's eyes fluttered, a spark of recognition igniting for a fleeting moment. A soft nod, then silence. Outside, the clamor intensified, a jarring reminder of the rival faction's brazen assault. The walls trembled, dust swirling like lost memories in the air. She gripped the Keeper's hand tighter, anchoring herself as dread coiled in her stomach. If they could just hold on a little longer. A resounding crash echoed through the dome, reverberating off the stone walls, shattering the fragile stillness. Xanthe jolted, her heart thudding violently in her chest. The Knowledge Keeper's eyes widened in fear, mingling with resignation. The stories she sought to salvage threatened to vanish, like mist in the morning sun. "No!" she shouted, her voice strained with urgency. She leaned closer, her breath mingling with the Keeper's, feeling life ebbing away. "Stay with me. We need to remember." Another crash, this time the sharp crack of wood breaking apart. The rival faction had breached the sanctuary. They were coming. Panic surged through Xanthe, a fierce tide threatening to sweep her away. She glanced toward the entrance, the heavy door splintering under the weight of brute force. The Keeper's grip slackened, fingers slipping from her grasp. No, no, no! She lunged, catching the frail hand just before it fell away. Her resolve hardened. The Knowledge Keeper deserved to be remembered, to pass on their legacy. But as the echoes of footsteps approached, dread pooled in her chest. Chaos loomed, a looming darkness ready to engulf them both. Xanthe's breath caught as the Knowledge Keeper's eyes closed, a finality that echoed louder than any crash outside. The stories remained unshared, trapped between breaths that would never be drawn again. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, a void where wisdom once resided. As dusk settled over the dome of knowledge, the air thickened with the scent of incense and the salty tang of the sea. Xanthe Yarrow stood at the heart of the sanctuary, where the massive dome soared above her, its stained glass windows casting vibrant patterns on the cool stone floor. The serene yet somber atmosphere enveloped her, filled with whispers of ancient stories and the faint sound of chanting. But today the usual tranquility was overshadowed by a rising tide of chaos outside. Her breath caught as the Knowledge Keeper's eyes closed, a finality that echoed louder than any crash outside. A void opened inside her, where wisdom once resided. The door loomed before her, a barrier between preservation and destruction. How much was she willing to sacrifice to reclaim what was slipping away? The flickering candles cast long shadows that mirrored her doubts. The Knowledge Keeper's frail form reminded her of the burdens she had carried for too long. Regrets whispered in the air, wrapping around her like chains. Her fingers brushed against the stone, seeking reassurance in the solidity of the dome, in the stories that had flourished here for centuries. They were alive, yet dying, just like the Keeper. The weight of his legacy pressed against her ribs, urging her to act before it was too late. The air thickened with the scent of incense, a blend she had grown accustomed to, yet today it suffocated. She shifted her gaze, darting to the door, the only exit from this sanctuary of knowledge. Outside, chaos brewed, a distant clamor tugging at her thoughts. She clenched her jaw, fighting against anxiety. If she failed to deliver justice, the cost would be permanent, not just for her, but for all who had come before her. The stories demanded respect, yet here she was, stalling in the face of duty. A sudden clash broke the stillness, pulling her from her reverie. Voices rose outside, urgent, chaotic. Xanthe's heart raced, matching the frenzy that surrounded her. What were they fighting for? The Keeper's breath hitched, a shallow reminder of the urgency gnawing at her. She had to act, but how? Her mind spiraled through options, each weighed down by shadows of past decisions. What if she made the wrong choice again? With a deep inhale, she straightened, determination igniting in her chest. The Knowledge Keeper's legacy demanded action, not hesitation. She stepped closer to him, her fingertips grazing his hand in a silent promise. The chaos outside could not drown out the urgency of this moment. She would honor him, uphold the truths he had shared. Each story mattered. Each life mattered. The flickering light of the candles pulsed in agreement, urging her to reclaim the narratives before they slipped into silence. Xanthe Yarrow sprinted through the grand arch of the Dome of Knowledge, where the air hung thick with the scent of ancient tomes and the lingering hum of wisdom. Time pressed upon her like a vice. If she failed to secure the Knowledge Keeper's final stories before the rival faction could unleash chaos, the consequences would erase her cultural legacy forever. With 3 days left until the week's end, each passing moment intensified the risk of losing everything she held dear. Echoes of her past failures haunted her steps, yet the urgency of the present drove her forward, fueled by the desperate need to protect the Keeper and the sacred relics housed within these walls. The sanctuary trembled as a distant roar broke through the thick stone walls, sending a jolt of fear through Xanthe. She reached the Knowledge Keeper's chamber, where the ancient figure lay slumped, his breath shallow and fading. No, no, no. She pressed her hands against his chest, her pulse racing. If she could just pull the stories from his fading mind, she could save their culture. But the sound of crashing wood and shouts echoed closer. Every second counted. The clock was ticking down the moments she had left. Xanthe, a voice shouted from the entrance, urgency lacing the warning. They're here. The rival faction is inside the dome. Her stomach twisted as panic welled inside her. She glanced at the Keeper, his eyelids fluttering. Stay with me, please. The sanctuary shook again, dust raining down as another violent impact rocked the building. The Knowledge Keeper's eyes flickered open and he rasped, Protect the relics. They hold our truth. Determination flickered in her eyes, fueling her resolve. The relics, the last remnants of their culture, were at risk.
The choice loomed before her like a shadow: save the keeper and risk losing the artifacts, or abandon him to retrieve the relics, jeopardizing their cultural heritage in the process. The door splintered violently, and figures cloaked in dark garb surged inside. Weapons raised, Xanthe grasped the keeper's frail hand, her pulse racing. "I won't leave you," but the urgency of the intruders forced her to make a choice. The shouts and commotion drew closer, each second intensifying the chaos. "I have to protect him." Just as she resolved to defend the keeper, an explosion erupted outside, a deafening roar that shattered the air. The walls trembled, and debris rained down, trapping her in the chamber. Darkness swallowing the light as the entrance collapsed. Dust swirled around her, and as Xanthe coughed, the weight of her choice pressed down on her shoulders. Trapped amidst the ruins, with the rival faction closing in, the story she sought slipped away with each shallow breath the Knowledge Keeper took. Panic surged as she clawed at the rubble, searching for a way out, but the walls of the dome felt like a cage closing around her. Time was running out, and she could hear the faintest whisper of the Keeper's last words echoing.
Dusk settled over the dome of knowledge, casting long shadows that danced across the rubble-strewn floor. Xanthe leaned against the cool stone wall, a rapid thumping in her chest, as the echoes of the explosion reverberated in her mind. The weight of the Knowledge Keeper's legacy pressed heavily upon her shoulders. Time slipped away, and a cold certainty gripped her bones. If she didn't act soon, the chance to honor his memory and protect their culture would slip through her fingers like sand. The rival faction was closing in, and she couldn't let fear dictate her next move. Not again. Dust swirled in the air, stinging her eyes as she struggled to breathe. Each shallow inhale tasted like ash, a bitter reminder of lost opportunities and failures. What had she accomplished in her years of service? Nothing but regret. She pressed her palms against her temples, squeezing her eyes shut against memories of those she couldn't save. The pressure mounted. If she didn't confront her past now, she would lose everything, a chance to redeem herself and protect what remained of her people's heritage. Yet the voices of her doubts crept in, whispering that she was unworthy, too weak to stand against the looming threat. With a shuddering breath, Xanthe pushed off the wall, wavering between the urge to flee and the weight of her responsibility. The Knowledge Keeper's voice echoed in her mind, urging her to stand firm, but the thought of facing the rival faction alone filled her with dread. They wouldn't hesitate to destroy her, just like they had obliterated the dome's sanctity. Panic surged through her, a hot flush creeping up her neck as she recalled the dwindling time. Just days remained. If she didn't deliver justice for the cave and its secrets, everything she cherished would vanish into the void, irreversible and permanent. Anxiety surged through her as she heard distant shouts, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. Each beat of her heart reminded her that she didn't have the luxury of time. She could either run, abandoning the Knowledge Keeper's legacy to the ashes, or stand her ground. Guilt twisted her insides. Each moment spent wavering felt like a betrayal, not just to the Keeper, but to herself. The risk was monumental. Facing them meant exposing herself to danger, perhaps even death. The shadows around her intensified, as if the very walls were closing in, forcing her to confront the truth of her choices. Just then, a voice pierced through the chaos. "Xanthe, we don't have time for this." It was her ally, Zephyr, urgency lacing his tone. "We need to go." Chapter 2: Echoes of Discovery. The midday sun filtered through the translucent dome of the Dome of Knowledge, casting intricate patterns on the earthen floor. Xanthe Yarrow crouched in the shadows of a forgotten alcove, the scent of seaweed stew wafting from a nearby communal gathering where artisans and laborers shared their midday meal. The air buzzed with conversation, punctuated by the occasional laughter of children chasing a vendor selling fried tuber slices. Honeyed grains still lingered on her lips from her last meal. But there was no time for hunger. Secrets hidden within these walls demanded her attention. The religious order watched her every move, and the thrill of discovery quickened her pulse. Xanthe's fingers brushed against the cool stone of the hidden chamber's entrance. Inside, remnants of the past lay scattered, faded scrolls, artifacts smeared with dust, and a broken idol of the Keeper of Echoes. As she sifted through the documents, her pulse quickened. They detailed findings manipulated by the order to obscure the truth of the vanished people's legacy.
Just as she pieced together the implications, the soft sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. She ducked behind a crumbling pillar, silently cursing herself for the oversight. How had she not heard them sooner? The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the low murmur of a familiar voice. "Elder Kiran will not be pleased if we fail to retrieve the artifacts before the next blessing," a man said, urgency thick in his tone. Xanthe strained to catch more of the conversation, recognizing the voice of one of the Order's keepers. The mention of a blessing sent a chill through her. They'd be offering thanks for the very deception she was unearthing. The old superstition echoed in her mind: whistling at night attracts spirits. She had to remain silent, lest the echoes of the past come back to haunt her. Xanthe glanced around the dimly lit room, noting faint signs of an herbalist's trade. The dome loomed above her, a constant reminder of the rules governing their lives. No one entered the dome of whispers without offerings. It was a mark of respect to honor the keeper of echoes. Desperation clawed at her as she considered the gathering outside, where meals were blessed and shared, while she remained hidden. If caught now, the consequences could be permanent, not just for her, but for all who sought the truth about the erased people. As the footsteps faded, Xanthe exhaled slowly, her chest tightening. She dared to peek out from her hiding spot, watching the keepers exchange solemn nods before they moved on, leaving the chamber in silence once more. The artifacts lay before her, each one a testament to a reality twisted by the hands of the religious order. They were more than mere relics. They were keys to understanding the past, and perhaps a way to reclaim her place in a world that had forgotten. She took a deep breath, the scent of the seaweeds.
The artifacts lay before Xanthe, remnants of forgotten truths, shrouded in dust and silence. She stepped closer, the pungent scent of incense curling around her like a warning. Each piece whispered secrets, urging her to uncover the stories buried beneath layers of deceit. The dome of knowledge, with its vaulted ceilings and shimmering light filtering through stained glass, felt more like a tomb than a sanctuary. Memories of childhood days spent exploring the shores rushed back, but this was no treasure hunt, it was a reckoning. The keepers had departed, leaving her alone with the truth, or what remained of it. Xanthe knelt, brushing her fingers over the jagged edge of a clay tablet. The etchings were familiar, yet the implications twisted her gut. The Order had manipulated every story and artifact, constructing a facade that had deceived generations. Her breath quickened as she assembled the fragments. Xanthe's throat tightened, and her shoulders sagged under the burden of their betrayal. "This can't be all there is," she said, her voice rising in defiance. But the room remained silent, the air thick with unspoken histories. A chill crept along her spine as she turned to a tattered scroll, unfurling it carefully. The words danced before her eyes, revealing a history rewritten, heroes vilified, and truths lost in shadows. Her fists clenched and her jaw set, cutting through the fog of disbelief. In a sudden burst of anger, she slammed her palm against the stone table, the sound echoing through the chamber with ferocity. "No more!" She straightened, fire sparking in her eyes as she embraced her conviction. If she was to reclaim knowledge, she must confront the Order, expose their corruption. Pacing, she bit her lip, the cost of justice looming larger than she ever expected. As she gathered the artifacts, one question echoed in her mind: what would she sacrifice for the truth? The scrolls pressed against her chest like a shroud, each artifact carrying the weight of lives intertwined with the lies. The air crackled with potential, the dome pulsing with ancient energy. Xanthe paused, her heart steadying, anchored by the knowledge that the fight was just beginning. Outside, the sea roared, a reminder of the storm she was ready to face, to reclaim the lost pieces of history. The truths she unearthed would change everything, or cost her everything. The dome of knowledge loomed like a sentinel over the restless sea, its high arches whispering secrets of the past. Inside, Xanthe stood at the threshold of a hidden chamber, her pulse thumping with the rhythm of the distant chanting. The scent of burning incense curled around her, mingling with the salty air, anchoring her amidst the weight of her mission. Artifacts surrounding her bore witness to lives entwined with the religious order's deceptions. Clenching the scrolls against her chest, she felt resolve hardening within her. Outside, the tempest raged, mirroring her thoughts. What would she sacrifice for the truth? The moment for hesitation had passed. Now was the time for action, for revelation. The chamber felt alive, shadows watching her every move. Xanthe crept deeper, fingers brushing against the cool stone walls.
Dust motes danced in the slants of light, and with each step the air thickened, heavy with unspoken histories. She scanned the room, eyes darting to shelves lined with scrolls and tomes, each one a potential key to the truth she sought. A sudden noise, footsteps, muffled yet unmistakable, froze her. The order was here. A tightness gripped her chest as adrenaline coursed through her. Pressing herself against the wall, she listened intently. No, she must not allow that to happen. Not now. Not after everything she'd sacrificed. Fingers trembling, Xanthe snatched a handful of scrolls, their edges crinkling under her grip. She spotted a small alcove, its shadows deep and inviting. Heart racing, she slipped inside, each beat echoing her urgency. The footsteps grew closer, voices low yet edged with authority. "We must ensure the truth remains buried," one said, their arrogance evident. She inhaled sharply, the scent of incense mingling with the sharp tang of fear. They were hunting for her. For the truth, remaining still, she became a silent observer in a world that demanded silence. As the order filed into the chamber, their robes sweeping the floor in a ghostly procession, Xanthe's thoughts spiraled. Would this be the end, or merely the beginning of a larger fight? She shifted slightly, the scrolls pressing against her ribs, a reminder of the stakes. The leader spoke, disdain dripping from every word. "We cannot allow dissent to thrive. Those who challenge us will be dealt with swiftly." A bitter taste filled her mouth. They were willing to kill to protect their lies. She had to escape. She had to find a way to expose them. With the voices fading, Xanthe edged from the alcove, heart hammering, clutching the scrolls tightly. She slipped through the chamber's entrance. The weight.
Xanthe stepped deeper into the hidden chamber, the dim light flickering against the ancient stones like whispers of the past urging her on. Shadows shifted across the floor, and the scent of incense mingled with the briny air, a reminder of the sea's restless embrace outside. The scrolls pressed against her chest, their secrets clamoring for release. Unraveling the truth intoxicated her, but it was perilous. The guards approached, their footsteps echoing closer, a constant reminder of the danger lurking in the dusk. Before her lay more than mere artifacts. It was a tangled web of deceit, and she was determined to cut through it. The ocean's roar receded as she faced the artifacts, her gaze hardening with resolve. Dust motes swirled in the fading light, settling on the surface of a battered tome. Xanthe lunged forward, hands trembling as she reverently opened the pages. Each word unfurled a history soaked in blood, a narrative woven with betrayal. The order's insignia marred the margins, dark and foreboding. She leaned closer, the musty scent of decay wrapping around her like a shroud. Hidden beneath layers of glossed-over truths was the connection she sought, evidence of a cover-up that reached into the very foundations of the dome itself. Her pulse quickened, urgency igniting her senses. The guards approached, their laughter echoing through the hall, a stark reminder that time was slipping away. With a sharp intake of breath, Xanthe snatched a small, intricately carved artifact from the table. Its surface was cool, smooth, an anchor in the chaos surrounding her. The weight of it felt right, a piece of the truth she had been pursuing. She traced the patterns with a fingertip, a map of secrets etched in wood. The guards' voices grew louder, their laughter a cruel mockery of her desperation. She had to decide, hide or flee. The thought of leaving the artifacts behind haunted her, but the risk of capture loomed like a dark cloud. Frozen in a moment where each heartbeat screamed a different choice, she found herself paralyzed by indecision. The temple's hushed tones wrapped around her, urging caution, yet an insistent fire in her gut urged her toward action. Xanthe glanced back at the entrance, shadows stretching like fingers reaching for her. The guard's footsteps drummed in her ears, relentless and foreboding. There was no time for hesitation. Adrenaline surged, propelling her toward the narrow alcove at the chamber's edge. She squeezed into the shadows, clutching the evidence tightly against her chest, her breath shallow as she listened intently for the guards. The weight of the truth pressed upon her like the ocean's tide, relentless and unforgiving. As the guards passed, the dome of knowledge hummed with the low murmur of voices as scholars and seekers exchanged insights over steaming bowls of seaweed stew, the rich scent mingling with the earthy aroma of dome-grown tubers. Xanthe Yarrow sat at a worn wooden table, her fingers tracing the rim of her bowl, the vibrant greens and browns swirling in chaotic patterns, mirroring her turbulent thoughts. Outside,
The sun cast long shadows, the ocean's roar a constant reminder of the urgency pressing against her heart. A group of fishermen exchanged stories nearby, their hands deftly mending nets, while a pair of herbalists discussed the latest findings in hushed tones, their eyes darting towards her as if she were a flame they dared not approach. The evidence before her pressed down with a weight heavier than the humid air surrounding them, thick with fear of the Order's wrath and the bitter taste of doubt. Xanthe lifted a spoonful of the stew, its warmth a temporary solace against the chill creeping into her bones. She hesitated, memories of past failures flooding in, the cold, hard looks from the elders as they dismissed her pleas for justice. A soft cough from the table next to her pulled her from her thoughts. An elder Kiran, his tunic a deep blue, gestured for silence, his head bowed slightly as he offered a blessing over his meal. The others followed suit, their heads dipping, but Xanthe remained still, the ritual feeling like a shroud around her. Did they know the truth she held? Would they still bow if they understood? The uneaten stew symbolizing her internal turmoil lingered before her. Gathering her thoughts felt like catching smoke. The more she reached for clarity, the more it slipped through her fingers. A memory of her mother's words echoed in her mind. "May the flame protect us from shadows, my child." Xanthe had never considered the flame beyond mere superstition, but now, with the evidence of the Order's corruption like a dagger in her pocket, doubt crept in. The ocean's roar urged her to take action, yet fear bound her to the chair, heavy like the salted nuts offered by the vendor earlier. The gentle clinking of bowls and the low buzz of conversation around her faded as she studied the faces of those who would join her cause, or betray it. A few tables over, a group of young apprentices shared fried tuber slices, their laughter ringing out like a challenge. Did they know the stakes? Did they feel the weight of inaction? The risk of confronting the Order felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, and yet the thought of remaining silent twisted in her gut, a betrayal to those who had fallen. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden rays through the dome's latticework, Xanthe's resolve solidified. She stood, her tunic brushing against her legs, and caught the attention of a few nearby scholars. They paused, forks poised over their bowls, surprise etched on their faces.
Chapter 3: Awakening in Light. Morning sunlight filtered through the stained glass of the dome of knowledge, casting intricate patterns on the cold stone floor. The air was thick with incense, mingling with the salty scent of the sea, creating an atmosphere of reverence and tension. Xanthe Yarrow crouched behind dusty shelves, her pulse quickening, with mere hours to uncover the ancient manuscript that could expose the truth about the religious order's failures. She felt the weight of time bearing down on her. The opportunity to reclaim her island's heritage was slipping away, lost beneath the oppressive silence of secrecy. Every second counted, her future depended on this moment. Xanthe's fingers trembled as she rifled through the scrolls, each one more brittle than the last. Sweat trickled down her spine, pooling at the base of her neck. "If I don't find it soon, they'll come for me. They always do," she said, her voice strained. The enforcers would be relentless, and she imagined their heavy boots echoing in the distance, a reminder that her time was running out. Every tick of the clock urged her to hurry. The hidden manuscript was somewhere in this sanctuary. She could sense its presence, but the looming threat pressed down on her, stealing her breath. Suddenly the door creaked open, and Xanthe froze, adrenaline surging through her veins. A pair of enforcers stepped inside, their expressions cold and calculating. "We know you're here, Xanthe. This is your last chance to abandon this foolish quest," one growled, hand resting on his weapon's hilt. "Leave now, and we won't have to make this painful for you." The words hung in the air, suffocating. She felt the pull to flee, but the desperate need for truth anchored her. 3 days left until the cave's secrets were sealed, and she couldn't turn back now. Not after everything she'd sacrificed. With a surge of determination, Xanthe turned back to the shelves, fingers searching frantically. Just then, a glimmer of parchment caught her eye, peeking from behind a larger scroll. "There," she gasped, yanking it free. The enforcers lunged forward. She barely had time to react. Manuscript clutched in hand, she darted aside, adrenaline pumping as she narrowly avoided their grasp. "You can't stop me," she shouted, breathless, as she tore through the archives. The truth was within her grasp, but at what cost? As she began to decipher the significance of the manuscript, the heavy door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. The enforcers advanced, their eyes dark with intent. "You think you can change anything?" one sneered, and their threat loomed ominously. Cornered in a place that had once felt sacred, Xanthe's resolve solidified. The truth could save her people, but it might also cost her everything.
In that moment, she made her choice, ready to fight for the relic of the past. You'll have to kill.
Morning light streamed through the stained glass of the grand dome, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the rough-hewn stone walls, each hue whispering secrets of the island's forgotten lore. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, mingling with the briny tang of the sea, reminding Xanthe of the intertwining of the divine and the earthly. Soft chants echoed from the depths of the archive wing, their rhythm underscoring the urgency coursing through her veins. Gasping for air, Xanthe tightened her grip on the manuscript, its weight a heavy tether to her destiny as she stood at the precipice of something monumental. The tension in the air twisted her stomach as the salty scent of the sea mingled with the incense. Shadows flickered as the enforcers made their presence known, their heavy boots thudding against the cobblestones, a sound that sent tremors of dread through her. Xanthe cast a desperate glance at the meditation gardens, shaking her head as resolve hardened within her. There was no time to escape into that refuge. The enforcers were drawing closer, their voices low and menacing, demanding the manuscript she had fought so hard to protect. "You can't take it," Xanthe shouted, her voice trembling yet fierce, echoing off the dome's grand arches. The words fell into the silence like stones cast into water, rippling through the air thick with incense and fear. The enforcers exchanged dark glances, their expressions unreadable, and Xanthe dug her fingers into the manuscript, drowning out the chaos around her. Sweat trickled down her back, mingling with the salty scent of the sea as she backed further into the shadows, desperate for an escape. The intricate carvings of the stone walls loomed around her, ancient stories of struggle and survival, and she clung to them, drawing strength from the past even as the enforcers advanced, their voices rising in authority, demanding the manuscript with a chilling certainty. As the enforcers surrounded her, the vibrant colors of the dome swirled into a dull haze, the chanting now a distant echo of what once felt sacred. The scent of incense mixed with the acrid tang of fear, a reminder that this sanctuary, once a refuge, had become a cage. Her hands trembled as she dug her fingers into the manuscript, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Amid the chaos, a single thought crystallized. This manuscript was more than a relic. It was her lifeline. She inhaled deeply, tasting the salt of the sea, as shadows loomed ever closer, ready to claim her fate. Morning light spilled through the stained glass openings of the dome of knowledge, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the rough stone walls and illuminating the dust motes that danced like ancient spirits. The air was thick with the bittersweet scent of incense, mingling with the briny tang of the sea, wrapping around Xanthe like a shroud. Soft chants resonated from the depths of the sanctuary, a haunting echo of wisdom that both comforted and warned her. Xanthe pressed her palm against the cool, textured stone, the history of the place pulsing through her fingertips, a reminder of the knowledge it protected and the danger encroaching. Each breath quickened, sharp with the weight of the enforcers closing in, their presence a dark shadow over her fragile sanctuary. Xanthe clenched the manuscript tightly against her chest, its edges digging into her skin as she darted through the arched corridors. The rustle of her skirts whispered secrets against the rough stone, but the soft chanting morphed into a low thrum of dread as she caught sight of the enforcers' silhouettes at the entrance. Their voices, sharp and demanding, sliced through the serene atmosphere, echoing against the dome's vaulted ceiling. "Give it to us, Xanthe. You know we will stop at nothing to retrieve what you've stolen." The threat suffocated the air, drowning the faint sound of leaves rustling in the meditation gardens outside. Her breath quickened, each inhale sharp with fear, yet her feet felt rooted to the ground, bound by the weight of her choices. Xanthe shoved the heavy wooden doors open, their groans of protest echoing through the archive wing. The scent of aged paper and wax enveloped her, a comforting perfume of knowledge that clashed violently with the fear coursing through her veins. She could hear their footsteps thundering behind her, a relentless pursuit that sent adrenaline rushing through her limbs. As she skimmed her fingers over the scrolls, their rough surfaces grounding her in this moment, hesitation gripped her. The manuscript pulsed against her chest, a living reminder of her quest. What was the cost of knowledge? Would she trade her life for the secrets it held? Suddenly a hand shot out, grabbing her arm with a vice-like grip. Xanthe gasped as the rough texture of the enforcer's palm clamped down, pain radiating through her like fire. "You think you can hide?" he snarled, his breath hot against her ear, tinged with the acrid scent of fear and anger.
She struggled, the manuscript slipping from her grasp, but she caught it just in time. In that moment, amidst the chaos, she realized the truth. This was more than just a relic. It was a lifeline, a chance to reshape the fate of her people. With fierce determination igniting her spirit, Xanthe twisted and broke free, her breath coming in sharp bursts as she made a choice. Would she surrender, or would she fight for what she believed in? As she
The dome of knowledge towered above her, its stained glass windows refracting the dusky light into vibrant shards that danced across the marble floor. Xanthe's breath quickened, urgency tightening her chest. The scent of incense hung thick in the air, mingling with the briny kiss of the sea, a reminder of the freedom waiting just beyond those doors. Yet, instead of sanctuary, it felt like a cage, with enforcers blocking her path, their muscles coiled and eyes fixed on her. Clutching the manuscript, she willed her feet to move, sensing the weight of their intent pressing down. The time had come. She had to fight for knowledge and for her life. Xanthe lunged forward, her heart racing. The enforcers formed a wall of muscle and menace, their laughter echoing through the sacred space. She ducked beneath their outstretched arms, the manuscript clutched like a lifeline. The door loomed ahead, a promise of escape, but doubt crept in. Could she really make it? They surged toward her, hands reaching as she dashed past a column, the cool stone brushing against her shoulder, grounding her. Just a few more steps. Freedom was within reach, but their taunts clawed at her resolve, a reminder of the stakes. A hand snagged her wrist, yanking her back. Pain shot through her as she twisted, desperation fueling her every move. The manuscript slipped from her fingers, landing just out of reach. "Look at you, little thief," one enforcer sneered, his breath rancid with triumph. Fury ignited within her. She couldn't let them win. They were wrong to think they could take her knowledge, her power. With a swift kick, she aimed for the enforcer's knee, adrenaline blurring her vision. She had to reclaim what was hers, or risk losing everything. The manuscript lay tantalizingly close, a beacon of her resolve. Yet the enforcers encircled her. "Hand it over, or you'll wish you had," one growled, his eyes glinting with malice. Xanthe's breath hitched, the fire in her chest roaring louder than her fear. They could threaten her, but they couldn't extinguish her spirit. She crouched low, muscles coiled like a spring, ready to leap for the manuscript. Every moment expanded, the world narrowing to that singular focus. This was her story, her fight. Failure loomed heavy in the air, but she wouldn't bend. Not now. With fierce determination flooding her veins, she lunged for the manuscript. The enforcers scrambled, surprised by her resolve. She grasped the edge of the parchment, her fingers brushing against the textured surface, and a surge of hope ignited within her. But one enforcer lunged forward, fingers curling around her wrist, tightening like a vice. The dome of knowledge loomed overhead, its ancient stones whispering secrets as dusk settled in like a shroud. Xanthe stood at the threshold, the scent of incense curling around her, mingling with the salty tang of the sea. Enforcers, figures of intimidation, blocked her path, their laughter echoing ominously in the sacred space. The manuscript lay beyond them, a relic transformed into a weapon, one that could pierce through their false narratives. She inhaled deeply, the air thick with history and the weight of her resolve. This was her moment, her stand against the forces that sought to suppress the truth. The spectre of sacrifice loomed before her, demanding its due. Xanthe lunged forward, every muscle coiling like a spring. The enforcers met her advance with their iron grip. A hand seized her wrist, twisting it painfully. Anger surged within her, hot and electric, igniting her resolve. She twisted, pulling free with a sharp jerk, but they were relentless, surging forward to reclaim their prize. The manuscript glimmered just out of reach, a tantalizing promise of liberation. The scuffle erupted, bodies colliding against the stone floor, the echoes of their struggle mingling with the soft chants of the dome. It was a sacred fight, and she was determined to claim her place within it. A sharp shove sent Xanthe sprawling onto the cold, worn stones. Breathless, she scrambled to her knees, eyes darting. The enforcers loomed above, faces twisted into sneers, a grotesque mockery of authority. "This is what happens to those who defy us." One spat, malice glinting in his eyes. They didn't just want the manuscript, they wanted her to know despair. The weight of their threats pressed against her chest like a heavy tome, suffocating in its authority.
Panic clawed at her throat, but beneath it simmered a fierce resolve. No one would break her spirit. Not here, not now. Desperation clawed at her as she scanned the dimly lit chamber, seeking any escape. The manuscript lay tantalizingly close, but the enforcers stood in her way, menacing figures. One stepped forward, brandishing a dagger, a glimmering blade that caught the light, a stark symbol of their intent. Chilling realization struck her. They intended to make an example of her, fight back, or be silenced forever. Her breath caught, heart racing, an internal war raging. Would she stand against the tide of injustice or be swept away? In that moment, the stakes became clear. This was no longer just about the manuscript. It was about reclaiming her voice, her story. Xanthe surged to her feet, adrenaline flooding her veins. The enforcers faltered, surprise breaking their facade of control. She lunged, her hand darting toward the manuscript, but their presence loomed over her like a storm cloud.
Chapter 4 Echoes of Empowerment. Xanthe stepped into the dome of forgotten knowledge, determination coursing through her veins as the midday sun streamed through the stained glass windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. Each flicker of light was a reminder of the island's tumultuous history, shaped by the oppressive hand of the religious order. Outside, voices rose in protest, echoing the unrest that simmered beneath the surface of her resolve. Among the relics of the past, she knew lay an artifact that could alter the island's fate if only she could seize it from those who sought to keep it hidden. She squared her shoulders, the enforcer's presence a stark reminder of the stakes involved. Xanthe scanned the vast dome, her gaze tracing the ornate carvings along the walls that whispered secrets of the island's founders. Each curve and line pulsed with a life of its own, urging her forward. She pressed through the throng, every step a battle against the oppressive atmosphere. The enforcers lingered nearby, their hawkish eyes searching for dissent. Sweat beaded on her temple, but she brushed it away, focusing instead on the pedestal at the room's center, shrouded beneath a heavy cloth. The artifact lay there, cloaked in mystery, waiting for someone bold enough to unveil its truths. As she approached, the fabric hummed with energy, as though it sensed her intent. Her fingers trembled, not from fear but from anticipation. The murmurs of the crowd faded, replaced by the pounding of her heart. With a swift motion, she yanked the cloth aside. Revealed was a small, intricately carved box, its surface adorned with symbols that resonated with forgotten lore. The enforcers shifted, unease radiating from them. Xanthe's breath hitched as she lifted the box, the weight of its significance settling onto her shoulders. What secrets would it reveal? She traced the carvings with reverent fingers, each groove telling a story, each symbol a piece of truth. The artifact felt warm and alive, as if it had been waiting for her touch. Images flooded her mind, visions of the island's founder, a figure shrouded in righteousness, battling the very order that now sought to suppress these truths. Her resolve solidified. This was more than an object. It was a key to unity, a call to arms against the corruption that had seeped into the roots of their home. The enforcers would not silence her. They would not silence the truth. With her heart swelling with purpose, she clasped the box close, drawing strength from it. Outside, the cries of the islanders rose, a chorus of hope against the oppressive silence. Xanthe turned to face the enforcers, a fierce determination igniting within. Xanthe stepped into the dome of knowledge, the artifact pressed against her chest, a silent drumbeat of anxiety. Shadows danced along the ancient stone walls, flickering in time with the distant murmurs of the islanders gathered outside, their hopes intertwining with her own. The scent of incense hung thick in the air, mingling with the briny aroma of the sea. Here, amidst the echoes of wisdom and the pulse of the divine, uncertainty coiled in her gut, a heavy anchor pulling her down. She gripped the box tighter, its cool surface grounding her as she crossed the threshold into the sanctuary of knowledge. This was where the truth would unfurl, and yet it felt like stepping into a storm with no shelter in sight. The weight of the artifact pulsed in her arms, each heartbeat a reminder of the fragile balance she now inhabited. What would confronting the religious order mean? Her pulse quickened, a relentless metronome marking her indecision. She traced her fingers over the intricate carvings, symbols of hope and legacy. Would they see her as a herald of change or a traitor to their faith?
A fire, she thought, extinguished blazed anew within her. With each breath, purpose seeped into the air, weaving a tapestry of possibilities threaded with the dreams of her ancestors. She paced the stone floor, each step echoing in the cavernous space a rhythm of uncertainty. The flickering candlelight cast elongated shadows, twisting and bending, mirroring her tumultuous thoughts. Was it cowardice to hesitate or wisdom to wait? She shook her head, banishing the whispers that threatened to overwhelm her. A clenched fist at her side, she inhaled the salty air, the chants of the islanders rising like a tide. They believed in her, didn't they? The burden of their expectations felt almost too much to bear. Yet the thought of inaction, of standing idly by while lives were lost, was an unbearable weight of its own. Then came the figure at the entrance, dark and flickering. Xanthe froze, the candle flames sputtering as if sensing her fear. Her heart drummed a frantic tempo, yet something deeper stirred within. She straightened, the box still cradled in her arms, a shield against the unknown. Who stood there? An ally? An enemy? The figure shifted, revealing a familiar silhouette. Recognition washed over her, a mixture of relief and trepidation. This confrontation loomed inevitable, as did the reckoning that would follow. Would she be ready? The figure stepped forward, and Lirael's familiar presence filled the space with urgency.
The dome of forgotten knowledge towered above Xanthe, its ancient stones steeped in centuries of whispered secrets and reverence. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, a heady blend of sandalwood, and something sharper, evoking distant shores and lost histories. Dusk descended like a shroud, casting elongated shadows that danced at the fringes of the gathering crowd, murmurs swelling and receding like the tide. Clutching the artifact, its cool surface a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere, she felt the pulse of justice coursing through her. This was the culmination of her relentless pursuit of truth, where fear and hope collided in this sacred space, demanding her voice be heard. "Listen, everyone!" Xanthe's voice sliced through the murmurs, sharp and resonant like the clang of metal on stone. The crowd turned toward her, eyes wide, some glinting with defiance, while others were clouded by doubt. She held the artifact aloft, its intricate carvings catching the last rays of sunlight. This artifact transcends mere relic status. It embodies our collective history and legacy. Can you sense its significance? She paused, inhaling deeply, the incense mingling with the earthy scent of the dome. Memories surged within her, nights spent poring over ancient scrolls, the exhilaration of uncovering long-buried truths. Her fingers traced the artifact's grooves, a habit cultivated from years of reverence for the past. "This belongs to us." A low rumble of dissent stirred in the crowd, a mixture of disbelief and fear. Xanthe pressed on, her voice rising with fervor. "The religious order wants to erase this, to erase us. They exploit our silence for their own gain." She caught a glimpse of an elder in the front row, his face etched with the weight of hard choices. His eyes flickered with recognition, as if he too had once dreamt of rebellion, back when the ruins still whispered their secrets. "I know you're afraid. I am too. But if we don't stand now, we'll lose everything. We're not just pawns in their game." A few in the crowd nodded, embers of courage igniting, while others recoiled, faces twisted with uncertainty. Xanthe's heart sank. She could almost hear the echo of her own doubts, the haunting memories of that disastrous dig, the screams that lingered in her mind like a cruel lullaby. She swallowed hard, forcing her voice to steady. "When I was a child, I wandered the cliffs, tracing the outlines of forgotten stones, imagining the lives they held. I didn't know then the price of inaction. I lost friends that day, lives cut short because we didn't listen. We can't repeat that mistake." As her words hung in the air, the crowd shifted restlessly. A woman shouted from the back, her voice trembling, "What if they come for us?" The warm golden light of the afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass openings of the grand dome, casting vibrant mosaics onto the rough stone walls, each hue whispering tales of the island's forgotten history. The air, thick with the heady scent of burning incense and salty sea breeze, wrapped around Xanthe like a comforting shroud, mingling with the charged tension of the gathering crowd. Soft chanting echoed through the arched corridors, a melodic reminder of the religious order's presence, while the rustling leaves of the meditation gardens whispered secrets of resilience. She took a deep breath,
The cool stone beneath her fingertips grounded her in the moment, and the weight of the artifact in her pocket pressed against her side, a heavy promise of truth and confrontation. Xanthe stepped forward, her pulse sinking with the distant waves crashing against the cliffs. "Today we reclaim our story." Her voice rang out, vibrant against the backdrop of hushed murmurs. The crowd shifted, eyes wide, reflecting the kaleidoscope of light dancing across their faces. The warmth of the afternoon sun illuminated their expressions, curiosity mixed with fear, as if the light itself could dispel the shadows of doubt lurking in their hearts. Around her, the rough texture of the stone walls pulsed with energy, as if the very structure of the dome was alive with their collective hope and trepidation. The scent of incense intensified, wrapping around her like a familiar embrace, igniting memories of evenings spent listening to the elders recount the island's rich past. But now the air felt different, charged with the potential for change. As she raised the artifact high, its surface gleaming in the sunlight, she tasted the faintest salt on her lips, the ocean's breath mingling with her determination. "Our founder's legacy has been tainted by those who sought to silence us," she cried, her voice carrying a weight that echoed off the stone walls, reverberating in the chests of her listeners, urging them to remember. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of skepticism and yearning. Some shifted uneasily, the texture of their woven garments rustling softly, while others leaned closer, drawn in by her fervor. The chanting from the corridors dwindled, leaving only the sound of her heartbeat and the pounding surf outside. Xanthe's resolve deepened as she spotted familiar faces among the crowd, friends, family, those who shared her childhood tales of rebellion and justice. "Together we can dismantle the fear they've instilled in us." Her voice rose above the stillness, hands gesturing as she spoke, as the last echoes of her words hung in the air. The dome seemed to breathe with her, a living testament to the islanders' resilience. The sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows that danced across the stone floor, mirroring the sun blazed overhead, pouring light over the intricately carved stone of the dome of forgotten knowledge. Shadows danced across the mosaic floor, a flickering reminder of the unrest that simmered among the gathered islanders. At the center of it all, Xanthe Yarrow stood breathless, the hidden artifact cradled in her hands. An urgent energy surged through her as she surveyed the crowd, faces marked with skepticism, eyes glimmering with fear. "Together we rise, or we face ruin alone." The words reverberated in her mind, a rallying cry against the oppressive silence. This was their moment, their reckoning, drawing in the briny scent of the sea mingling with the tension in the air. She prepared to unveil the truth long hidden beneath layers of dogma. Xanthe lifted the artifact, its surface shimmering under the midday sun. "This is our birthright," she called out, her voice slicing through the murmurs of doubt. The crowd shifted, some crossed their arms, others exchanged apprehensive glances. She sensed their reluctance to confront the ominous truth she was about to reveal, but pressed on, her determination sharpening. "The founder of our island was a dreamer, not the monster they've made him out to be. They have twisted our history to serve their own ends." Her words ignited a spark among the audience, transforming disbelief into a flicker of anger. Anticipation thickened the air, crackling like static before a storm. The murmurs crescendoed into a tumult, disbelief and fear clashing. "Lies!" someone shouted, their voice cutting through the tumult. Xanthe's pulse quickened, but she stood firm. "Not lies, the truth," she countered, her voice unwavering. "For too long we've let them dictate our fate, our stories. It's time to reclaim our narrative." A flicker of recognition ignited in some eyes, an ember of rebellion starting to glow. With every breath she wove a connection among the islanders, binding them to their shared legacy. A woman stepped forward, her features weathered yet resolute. "What do you want us to do? Risk everything for a history we're not sure we can trust?" Xanthe's heart raced, the question hung like a storm cloud. "Yes, risk everything," she cried, urgency spilling from her lips. "Our ancestors fought for this land, for our right to choose. They didn't back down against oppression, and neither should we." The crowd stirred again, uncertainty crashing against her resolve. But she pressed on, her heartbeat sinking with the rising tide of defiance. "Justice awaits us, but only if we stand together." The energy in the dome crackled, tension palpable in the air. Xanthe's voice swelled, passion pouring forth like a torrent. Chapter 5. Echoes of Illumination.
The dome of forgotten knowledge loomed above Xanthe, its arching ceiling a tapestry of shadows, each flickering candle casting a ghostly glow over the faces of the crowd. The air thickened with unsteady reverence, a sharp contrast to the tension vibrating within her. The artifact clenched in her hand felt heavier, anchoring her to a past she could no longer ignore. She had stood before them as a beacon, but now their gazes bore down like a heavy fog, threatening to suffocate her. What lay ahead felt darker than the gathering dusk outside, and the artisan's voice echoed in her mind. What would you choose when the night closes in? Xanthe's heart raced, each beat echoing the artisan's absence. She scanned the crowd, their faces a mix of hope and despair. The flicker of their candles almost drowned in the encroaching shadows. A hand reached for her shoulder. Silas, his eyes searching. "We need a plan, Xanthe, the council," he began, but his words dissolved into silence. The council? Their voices had been silenced, a mockery of authority in the artisan's absence. Frustration coursed through her. No plan could mend the rift of loss. No words could fill the void. The burden of responsibility settled like a stone in her gut, pressing her deeper into the ground. She wanted to scream, to flee into the depths of the island where history lay buried, but the faces around her anchored her in place, demanding she confront the chaos. The dome's walls whispered of forgotten stories, tales of warriors and artisans who had once walked these same stones. Xanthe stepped closer to the altar, fingers brushing the worn surface, tracing the grooves etched by time. Memories surged, laughter, passion, the vibrant hum of creativity. Each recollection sparked a flicker of defiance within her, yet the artisan's absence loomed over her, a constant reminder of loss and the tasks still ahead. She inhaled deeply, the scent of old parchment and burning wax filling her lungs. It was both a comfort and a curse. How could she carry their legacy when her own felt so fractured? Silas remained at her side, his presence a quiet reminder of their bond. "You can't carry this alone. We stand with you, but you must lead us, Xanthe. You must channel this grief into action." His voice trembled slightly, a crack in his armor. She turned to face him, seeking strength in her own reflection. But doubt twisted in her stomach. Could she honor the artisan's memory, or was she destined to retreat into the shadows? The crowd shifted, restless tension crackling like static in the air. A murmur surged forth, voices rising and falling, a tide of emotions threatening to spill over. Xanthe's gaze darted to the entrance, where darkness waited, a malevolent force. Morning light streamed through the stained glass openings of the dome of knowledge, casting a kaleidoscope of colors onto the rough stone floor, each hue a whisper of ancient wisdom. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, mingling with the salty tang of the nearby sea, wrapping around Xanthe like a comforting shawl. Soft chants emanated from the great hall, a gentle sound that echoed against the vaulted dome, creating a serene yet somber atmosphere. Xanthe stood before the cool, textured wall, tracing the intricate carvings that depicted the island's lost history. A shiver of anticipation danced along her spine as she inhaled deeply, the weight of her purpose pressing down on her. As she stepped further into the dome, the sound of her footsteps echoed softly, swallowed by the reverent silence that enveloped her. The whisper of the wind through the meditation gardens rustled the leaves, reminding her of the world outside the sanctuary's protective embrace. Xanthe clenched her fists, determination flooding her as members of the religious order approached, concern etched on their faces. Their robes brushed against each other like the rustling of parchment, a stark contrast to her own worn attire, the fabric rough against her skin. She took a deep breath, the taste of salt lingering on her lips, and steadied herself to speak. "You can't let the artisan's death mark the end of our quest," she implored, her voice rising with fervor. "His teachings are the foundation of our understanding, the key to unlocking the truths of our past." The flickering shadows cast by the stained glass seemed to dance in agreement, igniting a fire within her. But their faces remained resolute, brows furrowed like clouds threatening rain. One elder stepped forward, shaking his head slowly, the scent of incense swirling around him, thickening the air. "Without him, the knowledge is lost. We must let go, Xanthe," he said, his voice a low rumble, as if the very stones echoed his sentiment. Xanthe's shoulders slumped and her gaze fell, though a small spark of hope remained. The archive wing beckoned, a promise of hidden knowledge, a sanctuary for the whispers of the past.
The heavy wooden doors loomed ahead, their texture rough and aged yet inviting. "I will find a way to honor his legacy," she whispered to herself, steeling her resolve against the tide of despair. As she approached the archive wing, the atmosphere shifted, the air crackling with potential. The soft chanting faded, replaced by the beating of her own heart, echoing in her ears like a drum of war. Xanthe paused, her hand resting on the cool, heavy door, the pulse of history vibrating beneath her fingertips. The salty breeze from
the scent of ancient parchment clung to the air like a shroud, mingling with the faint, smoky residue of incense that curled around the stone pillars of the dome of forgotten knowledge. Dusk cast a golden glow, illuminating the dust motes that floated lazily, echoing the whispers of long-gone scholars. Xanthe stood at the centre, heart heavy, her mismatched socks brushing against the cool stone beneath her as she traced the spines of the leather-bound tomes. The coolness seeped into her skin, grounding her in a world that felt increasingly unreal. Shadows stretched across the room, and she fought the urge to flee, the weight of the artisan's death pressing down like the thick air before a storm. She ran her fingers over the spines, pausing at a volume that smelled faintly of salt and damp earth, like the coast of her childhood. Memories surged, uninvited, the echo of laughter, the sea breeze tangling her hair, and the thrill of discovery. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "If only you were here, lights of the past, to guide me through this mess. I could use a little bit of your wisdom now," she muttered, sarcasm lacing her voice as she spoke to the empty room, her eyes watering at the thought of what could have been. The echoes of the artisan's teachings reverberated in her mind, a cacophony of wisdom and warning. "You must seek the truth, Xanthe, no matter the cost," she recalled, the artisan's voice clear and firm. But the cost, that was the question, wasn't it? The past whispered of failures, of lives lost in the pursuit of knowledge. Her heart clenched at the thought. She dropped her gaze, fingers twitching against her pendant, a relic she'd clung to since her days at the Institute. A talisman against the guilt, a reminder of why she fought. A distant drumbeat echoed, reverberating through the dome, a reminder that time pressed on. She should be searching the archives, uncovering the truth behind the artisan's work. But instead, she lingered, paralyzed by the weight of her own inadequacies. "What if I fail again?" she said softly, the words almost swallowed by the murmurs around her. No reply came, only the rustle of pages turning in the wind. The thought of failure tightened her chest, but the thought of doing nothing felt like surrender. There had to be a way to honor his memory, to protect the heritage he'd fought for. With a deep breath, Xanthe squared her shoulders. Her determination flickered like a candle in a draught. But it was there, struggling to catch. "You can do this, Xanthe. You have to," she whispered to herself, the words mingling with the incense-laden air. She took a step toward the nearest shelf, her fingers brushing against the weathered bindings, ready to dive into the chaos of knowledge. The air in the dome of forgotten knowledge crackled with a tension that pressed against Xanthe's chest, heavier than the book she cradled. It was dusk, the waning light casting long shadows across the ancient stone walls, whispering secrets of wisdom long lost. The crowd surged around her, a restless sea of anger and grief, their voices rising in a tumult that matched the chaos in her heart. She had come seeking solace, clarity, and yet the artisan's death loomed over her like a storm cloud, dark and unrelenting. Memories of his teachings wrapped around her, tightening like a noose, but there was no turning back. This was her moment to confront the shadows, to claw her way towards the light amidst the suffocating despair. Xanthe stepped deeper into the dome, the weight of countless gazes pressing into her skin. Each face, a canvas of sorrow, mirrored her own turmoil, amplifying the cacophony of loss. Her pulse quickened as she caught snippets of their anguish, words like betrayal and fool pierced through the air, sharp and accusatory. The artisan had been a beacon, a guardian of their knowledge, and now that light flickered dangerously close to extinguishing. She clenched the book tighter, the pages rough against her palm, grounding her as she waded through the murmur. If only she could grasp the remnants of his wisdom, if only she could silence the crowd with truth. But how? A figure emerged from the shadows, draped in a cloak of mystery. Xanthe froze. The flickering torchlight danced around the stranger, illuminating a face that held both promise and danger. "You seek the artisan's last relic?" the figure rasped, voice low and enticing. The crowd hushed,
curiosity hanging thick in the air. "It is locked away, but I can guide you to it, at a price." Xanthe's heart raced. What price? Hope wrestled with dread. The crowd shifted restlessly, unaware of the perilous bargain unfolding before them. She dared a glance at the figure, their eyes glinting with a knowing darkness. What did it mean to bargain with knowledge? A sudden outcry broke through the tension. Someone shouted, "We will not be silenced." The crowd surged forward, outrage igniting like wildfire. Xanthe staggered back, the book slipping from her grip. She lunged forward, grasping it just in time. The words within promised to guide her, yet their power felt constrained by the chaos swirling around her. The dome, once a sanctuary, morphed into a battleground of desperation. She needed clarity, but the noise echoed louder than her own thoughts. She couldn't lose herself in the frenzy. She had to stand firm to reclaim her voice amidst the discord. Amidst the chaos,
The dome of forgotten knowledge loomed around Xanthe. Its ancient stones, steeped in shadows as dusk, swallowed the last slivers of light. Each breath felt heavier, the weight of the artisan's death pressing down on her, a reminder of all she had lost. If she didn't act soon, if she didn't confront her inadequacies and seize the relic before the week ended, she would lose more than just her connection to her purpose, she would lose herself. The clock was ticking, and the echoes of the past curled around her, taunting her with visions of despair. 3 days, until everything she knew would be erased forever. Xanthe sank to the cool stone floor, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the ancient carvings. Memories of the artisan flooded her mind. His laughter, the way he molded clay, as if shaping futures, not just pottery. But instead of solace, those memories twisted into chains, binding her to her fears. What if she failed? What if the relic slipped through her fingers like so many dreams? Her heart pounded, each beat a reminder of the time slipping away. She gasped, the air thick with dread, as the shadows of the dome shifted, closing in. "You have to fight, Xanthe." The echo of her own voice bounced off the stone walls, but it felt hollow. What did it mean to fight when every connection she sought to preserve was under threat? She wanted to scream, to lash out at the darkness creeping in, yet a part of her was paralyzed, frozen in the grip of doubt. The weight of expectations bore down on her, and for a moment she thought of retreating into the depths of despair, of letting the shadows swallow her whole. But what then would that truly honor the artisan's legacy? The specter of the cave loomed in her mind, a constant reminder of the urgency. The consequences of inaction were clear and cruel: leave the island and face the unknown, or risk losing everything she held dear. The remnants of a life she cherished flickered like dimming stars, and she felt the panic rise like bile in her throat. Time slipped through her grasp like sand, and Xanthe knew that retreating now would only solidify her failures. No, she had to embrace her worth, not just the legacy of the artisan, but her own. "I can't do this alone," she shouted, her voice cracking against the stone. The silence that followed was deafening, amplifying her isolation. Every breath felt like a countdown, every moment a reminder that she had to choose. Fight for the relic, risk devastation, or fade into obscurity, her name forgotten like so many before her. There was no easy path, and the shadows pressed closer, whispering doubts in her ear. But then, a flicker of resolve sparked within her. She had to decide, and soon, with her heart racing, Xanthe rose to her. Chapter 6. Echoes of Empowerment. Xanthe stepped into the dome of forgotten knowledge, the air thick with anticipation, a tangible pulse echoing from the walls lined with the memories of her ancestors. Sunlight filtered through the dome's stained glass, casting fractured patterns of color that danced across the faces of the gathered residents. Each flicker ignited a spark within her, a reminder of what they had lost. Today was the day to reclaim their heritage, to awaken the dormant spirit of the island. The murmurs of doubt mixed with reverence, yet beneath it all she sensed the same hunger that gnawed at her. A storm brewed within, and she would not shy away. This was their moment, and she would seize it, even if it meant standing alone. No more hesitation. Xanthe raised her voice, the sound reverberating through the dome like a battle cry. "We have waited long enough. The relic is out there, hidden in the shadows of our past, and it is our birthright to reclaim it." Her words hung in the air, each syllable a call to arms, but the crowd's response was muted. Faces turned away, eyes darting, fear gripping their hearts tighter than the chains of the order. A knot tightened in her stomach. Did they see her as a leader or a fool?
A murmur rippled through the assembly. Skepticism etched across the brows of elders, their eyes clouded with doubt. Xanthe pressed on, passion igniting her voice. "We can't let the religious order dictate our fate any longer. They've stripped us of our history, our very identities. We must stand together." As she spoke, she caught the gaze of a young woman, her lips trembling in uncertainty, and a flicker of hope ignited. Yet, as quickly as it sparked, a heavy voice broke through the murmur of the crowd. "And what do you truly seek, Xanthe? Glory for yourself or justice for our people?" The elder's words sliced through the air, a chilling reminder of the division among them. Xanthe's heart sank. Doubt. It spread like a disease, infecting the crowd. She searched their faces, some hardened with resignation, others painted with fear. "I seek nothing but our freedom," she cried, desperation lacing her tone. "A chance for our children to inherit a legacy, not a prison." But the elder's gaze remained unwavering, piercing her resolve. A few heads nodded, but others turned away, whispers swirling like autumn leaves caught in a tempest. She felt the ground shifting beneath her, the fragile unity fracturing like old stone. The meeting was slipping through her fingers, and with it, the hope of a united front. The elder's voice echoed in her mind, a relentless drum that drowned out her conviction. People began to rise, some leaving, shadows of their former selves drifting away from the light of her vision. Xanthe's breath hitched, a desperate plea lodged in her throat. She stepped forward, arms outstretched, her voice rising above the din.
The midday sun filtered through the intricate lattice of the dome of forgotten knowledge, casting shifting patterns on the gathered crowd. Xanthe Yarrow stood at the center, the scent of seaweed stew wafting from a communal pot nearby, mingling with the sweetness of honeyed grains from a vendor's tray. People milled about, their simple tunics, woven from seagrass and undyed cotton, rustling softly in the warm breeze. The sound of laughter and the clatter of wooden bowls filled the air, punctuated by the reverent whispers of those invoking the Keeper of Echoes before each meal. Today, however, the atmosphere was thick with tension as Xanthe prepared to challenge the very foundation of their faith. Xanthe lifted her voice above the murmurs, her hands gesturing toward the horizon where the sea met the sky. "We have forgotten our stories, our heritage. Look at what we consume, this stew, these fruits. They are not just our sustenance, they are a testament to our ancestors' resilience. Remember the tales of the silent guardian who guided us through storms." She paused, scanning the faces around her, some nodding slowly, while others cast wary glances toward the shadows of the dome, where the elders often loomed, watching with disapproving eyes. A child nearby slipped a piece of fried tuber into their mouth, eyes wide with wonder, embodying the curiosity that had once driven their ancestors to explore beyond the waves. As she spoke, a fisherman at the edge of the gathering adjusted his woven basket, filled with freshly caught fish, and offered a brief bow to Xanthe, a gesture of respect that rippled through the audience. "You speak of reclaiming our past, but what of the consequences? The Order will not take kindly to our defiance," he warned, his voice low yet unwavering. Xanthe's heart raced, but she pressed on. "What is the price of silence? We must not fear the shadows. We must shine a light on the truth of our lineage, the very essence of who we are." The crowd shifted, some exchanging nervous glances, while others leaned in closer, captivated by her fervor and the promise of hope. With renewed resolve, she continued, weaving tales of her own ancestors who had defied the Order, their spirits now watching over them, perhaps whispering through the rustling leaves of the dome. "The Keeper of Echoes speaks through us, urging us to remember. If we remain silent, we invite the spirits of the vanished to haunt us further. Do you wish to live under their weight?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and she could see the hesitance turning into determination as the fervor of shared identity sparked in their eyes. "Together we can confront the Order, reclaim what is rightfully ours." Her voice rang louder. The afternoon sun filtered through the high domed ceiling of the Dome of Forgotten Knowledge, casting intricate shadows on the gathered crowd. A mix of earthy scents wafted through the air, the aroma of seaweed stew mingling with the sweet notes of honeyed grains being shared among small groups. Children darted between adults, their laughter ringing like chimes, while older folk sat together, dipping into bowls of smoked fish and foraged fruits, exchanging stories like currency. Xanthe Yarrow stood on a makeshift platform, her heart racing as she surveyed the faces before her, their expressions a tapestry of skepticism and hope. She lifted a wooden bowl filled with warm seaweed stew,
the steam curling upwards as if beckoning them closer. "Look at what we have made together," she called, her voice carrying over the murmurs. A few heads turned, and she noticed Elder Kiran's sharp eyes narrowing, a subtle warning against the breach of decorum. But the smell of the stew, rich with herbs, seemed to draw some in. "This is our bounty," she proclaimed, holding the bowl aloft, invoking the Keeper of Echoes with a fervent prayer. "May the flame protect us as we stand united." As she spoke, the crowd's unease began to shift, stirred by the warmth of shared food and purpose. A fisherman in the front row, his tunic frayed but clean, nodded, his hands still stained from the day's catch. He raised a hand, not pointing, but gesturing in a way that showed respect, a slight bow of his head. "Xanthe, what if they come for us? The Order won't let this stand," he said, his voice low but steady. A ripple of agreement murmured through the crowd, the air thick with the weight of unspoken fears. "They've kept us in the shadows for too long." Xanthe pressed on, her hands trembling slightly as she recalled the Elder's warnings against angering the Order. "We have skills, craftsmanship, fishing, herbal remedies. We can reclaim our history." As she spoke, a young woman near the back stood, her eyes fierce. "I know the old stories of the vanished. We can share them." The murmurs turned to voices, rising in a chorus of shared determination, as bowls of stew were lifted and hands reached out in solidarity. As the crowd rallied, the air shimmered with a new energy, the tension transforming into a palpable resolve. Outside, the wind howled through the dome's arches, carrying tales of the vanished, a reminder that their legacy lay not in silence but in action. Xanthe's heart raced. They were no longer just a gathering but a movement, one that could challenge the very foundations of the religious order that sought to erase them. And as they stood united, the faint echo of a whistle drifted through the open space, a reminder of the spirits watching over them, urging them forward into a destiny reclaimed.
The crowd buzzed, their voices a tapestry of uncertainty and hope. Xanthe stood at the center of the dome of forgotten knowledge, the ancient stone walls reverberating with whispers of the past. Dusk bathed the dome in a golden hue, illuminating the faces of those who had gathered, some anxious, others emboldened. Outside, the wind howled, a wild chorus that echoed the urgency in her heart. She inhaled deeply, the scent of aged parchment and dust mingling with the cool air, filling her with a sense of purpose. No longer just spectators, they were on the precipice of reclaiming their legacy, and she was determined to guide them toward a future unshackled from fear. Xanthe stepped forward, her voice steady, yet charged with intensity. "We stand on the shoulders of giants, the architects of our own fate. Look around you. Each of you carries a piece of our story, our skills woven into the very fabric of this island. We are not mere shadows of what once was. We are the light that can pierce the darkness." Her words ignited a flicker in their eyes, a spark that swirled in the heavy air. She could see it, the apprehension, though thick, began to crack. She locked eyes with a man gripping his daughter's hand, his jaw clenched tight, fear etched across his brow. But beneath that fear she glimpsed something else, a glimmer of longing for the past they had lost, the heritage they could reclaim. "Once we thrived," Xanthe continued, her hands sweeping wide, embracing the crowd. "Before the Order came, we were artisans, scholars, explorers of the unknown. Remember the tales of our ancestors, the dances beneath the stars, the songs that wove the fabric of our nights? They didn't cower in the face of oppression. They fought, and we must do the same." The air thickened with emotion. A woman near the front nodded, her lips pursed in thought, the tension in her shoulders slowly easing as Xanthe's conviction seeped into the cracks of their doubt. Xanthe took a moment, letting her words hang in the air, giving space for reflection. The silence was heavy, but filled with possibility. She watched as the crowd shifted, some exchanging glances, unspoken questions hanging between them. She saw the flicker of courage igniting, a slow awakening. A young man, hands trembling, lifted his chin. "You're right, we remember. We can't let them erase us any longer." His voice trembled, but it cut through the tension like a dagger, stirring the crowd into a quiet swell of agreement. Xanthe's heart soared. Hope was spreading, a tide washing over the fears that had held them captive for too long. The energy in the dome shifted, a palpable wave of determination rising. Xanthe scanned the faces, her comrades, no, her allies, each one. The dome of forgotten knowledge loomed overhead, its ancient arches holding stories of resilience and despair. Sunlight poured through the stained glass, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the stone floor, each hue a reminder of the hopes they had forged. Xanthe stood at the center, her allies encircling her like a shield. Shadows danced among them, whispering doubts that threatened to unravel the unity she had nurtured. The air crackled with anticipation, the weight of their shared fate pressing against her chest. What had begun as a flicker of determination now teetered on the edge of chaos, ready to ignite. Would they seize their legacy or let it slip through their fingers? Xanthe took a breath, steadying her voice as she unfurled her plan. We confront the religious order head-on. Their grip on our lives can't withstand our collective strength. Each of us has a role to play, and together we will dismantle their power. Her words hung in the air, heavy with promise. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but not all of it was supportive. From the back, a figure surged forward, face taut with defiance. "Why should we follow your lead? Your vision doesn't speak for us." The dissenting voice sliced through the tension, a blade of distrust aimed straight at her heart. Xanthe's pulse quickened, the rhythm of her resolve faltering. This is no time for division. She stepped closer, scanning the faces around her. Some nodded, eyes wide with uncertainty, while others sneered, arms crossed like barricades. The room vibrated with discontent, and she felt the ground beneath her shift. "We have to unite, otherwise we risk everything." Yet the dissenters pressed on, their voices rising like a tempest, drowning her appeal in a sea of anger and fear. She pinched the bridge of her nose, battling against the rising tide of panic. Was she losing them? The air thickened, each breath a challenge as the debate escalated. Shouts echoed off the dome's walls, a cacophony of conflicting agendas. "You think we can trust you?" Another voice barked, shaking with passion. "You're just a puppet for the old ways." Xanthe's chest tightened. They were unraveling before her eyes, a tapestry of hope fraying at the seams. She glanced at her allies, their expressions a mix of concern and determination. Could she really hold them together? With a final desperate push, Xanthe raised her hands, palms open. "We can't afford to fracture. If we don't act now, the consequences will be irreversible. Our chance at justice is slipping away." Silence fell briefly, tension crackling like electricity. She could. Chapter 7. Shadows of Revelation. Dusk draped the dome of knowledge in a somber veil, the fading light casting elongated shadows on the stone walls, their rough surfaces warm beneath her fingers. Stained glass windows flickered with the final rays of sun, splashing hues of deep indigo and vibrant crimson across the gathered crowd, a kaleidoscope of emotion that mirrored her own. The air thickened with the heady scent of burning incense, mingling with the salt of the nearby sea, creating an atmosphere heavy with history and unspoken sorrow. Soft, distant chanting echoed through the arched corridors, threading through the whispers of the night, beckoning her to step forward and embrace the weight of their shared pain. Heart racing, Xanthe inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of her ancestors urging her onward, a call to unify those lost in the shadows of fear. The crowd swelled, their faces illuminated by the gentle glow filtering through the stained glass, casting a colorful yet melancholic light on their expressions. Xanthe raised her voice, steady despite the tremor in her chest. "We stand here, not just as individuals, but as a tapestry woven from the threads of our past. Each of us carries the weight of those we've lost, the stories that echo in the walls of this sacred place. Together we can transform that sorrow into strength." Her words hung in the air, charged with the energy of the moment, vibrating against the cool stone. A faint rustling of leaves from the meditation gardens added a whisper of life to the gathering, the soft sound mingling with the rhythmic chanting that pulsed like a heartbeat within the dome. Xanthe felt the texture of the stone beneath her palm, grounding her, reminding her of the generations that had sought solace and wisdom within these walls. The archive wing holds our history, the scrolls and artifacts safeguarding the essence of who we are. We must not allow them to fade into oblivion. Her voice rose, igniting flickers of hope in the eyes of her listeners, dispelling shadows of doubt. As she spoke, a warm breeze drifted through the open archways, brushing against her skin like the gentle caress of a long-lost friend. It carried with it the brine of the sea, the scent reminding her of summers spent on the shore, laughter mingling with the crash of waves. We must rise together as guardians of our heritage. The world beyond this dome is watching, waiting for us to falter, but we will not falter.
Each word fell like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of resolve through the crowd, their breaths synchronizing, hearts aligning in shared purpose. As Xanthe concluded, the air thick with emotion,
Dusk settled over the dome of knowledge, casting long shadows that danced across the faces of the gathered islanders. The air was thick with the scent of seaweed stew simmering in communal pots, mingling with the sweetness of honeyed grains served on woven platters. Xanthe stood at the forefront, her simple tunic catching the last light, the earth tones blending almost seamlessly with the surroundings. Around her, islanders of all ages, from weathered elders to curious children, formed a semicircle, clutching their bowls of stew. The gentle sound of murmured prayers wafted through the air, punctuated by the soft clang of metal as a nearby craftsman polished a tool, a reminder of the daily labor that had forged their lives. Xanthe raised her voice, the warmth of the stew forgotten as she spoke of their ancestors, her heart pounding with urgency. We are the stewards of their stories, the keepers of their pain. Together we must rise against the shadows that threaten to erase us once more. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and she noticed one elder, eldest Kiran, nodding slowly but warily, the lines of his face deepening in thought as he sipped from his bowl. The salty taste of smoked fish lingered on his lips, reminding him of the days when unity was a given, not a fragile hope. Nearby, a young girl clutched a piece of fried tuber, her eyes wide as she absorbed the weight of Xanthe's words. A whisper of a feather brushed against her ankle. Could it be a sign from the Keeper of Echoes? The crowd shifted, uncertainty mingling with the aroma of foraged fruits that were being passed around as offerings. Xanthe's gaze landed on a cluster of women, their vibrant garments a stark contrast to her own modest attire. They wore colorful dresses, embellished with intricate designs, symbols of their family's wealth and status. One of them, a familiar face, broke the unspoken rule of decorum by addressing her without title, drawing gasps from the onlookers. "Xanthe, you think we can trust each other? After all we've lost?" The question hung in the air like the thick humidity, forcing Xanthe to pause, a tension crackling like the sparks from a nearby fire pit. "We have lost too much already," she retorted, her voice sharp as she stepped forward. "We cannot afford to let our divisions dictate our fate. God's willing we can find strength in our shared stories, in the legacy of our ancestors." The words flowed like the herbal infusions served at communal meals, soothing yet invigorating. Her heart raced, feeling the pulse of the crowd and the weight of years of distrust, but somewhere in the depths of her resolve a flicker of hope ignited as she caught the eye of a fisherman, his hands roughened from years of labor but filled with determination. As the gathering swelled with murmurs of agreement, Xanthe felt the atmosphere shift, like the tide turning in their favor. The dome of knowledge stood in reverent silence, its walls echoing with whispers of ancient tales as Xanthe sank into its cool embrace. Outside, the islanders gathered, their voices a tapestry of hopes woven with the salty tang of the sea. The feather, a delicate promise from the Keeper of Echoes, lingered in her thoughts. Inside, the air was thick with incense, the scent wrapping around her like a shroud. She braced herself against the weight of expectations, staring at the offerings left behind, a reminder of shared sacrifice and unity. Here, amid the stories etched in stone, her heart grappled with the enormity of the trust bestowed upon her. Would she rise to meet it? Xanthe traced a finger along the cool surface of the dome, where images of ancestors danced in the dim light, their eyes glimmering with wisdom. The stories of battles fought and sacrifices made resonated in her bones. Yet, as the echoes of their voices faded, doubt crept in. What if she faltered? What if her decisions unraveled the fragile thread of unity they had just begun to weave? The weight of leadership pressed down, a cloak stitched not with threads of gold but with the fears she couldn't shake. She clenched her fists, knuckles white, as memories of her own inadequacies surfaced, a tangle of failures that clawed at her resolve. Xanthe's breath hitched, catching on the sharp edge of her anxiety. She glanced around the vast dome, its architecture a symbol of strength, yet inside her chaos reigned. The islanders had placed their faith in her, and here she was, alone, teetering on the brink of uncertainty. What if I am not enough? The words echoed in her mind, a relentless chant. She pushed herself off the stone bench, pacing the circular space, her footsteps echoing like thunder against the silence. Each step was a question, a plea for clarity amidst the swirling doubts.
She had to confront the shadows lurking in her heart. The lull of the sea outside beckoned, a soft reminder of the connection she craved. With each wave crashing against the shore, a flicker of realization ignited within her. Leadership wasn't about perfection, it was about embracing vulnerability. The ancestral stories surrounded her, not just as monuments of the past, but as guiding lights for the future. She paused, letting the warmth of the sun filter through the dome's openings, illuminating the dust particles dancing in the air. In that moment, clarity washed over her. The islanders didn't need a flawless leader, they needed someone willing to stand with them, flaws and all. Courage wasn't the
Xanthe stood at the threshold of the dome of forgotten knowledge, the feather cradled in her palm, its fragile quill a stark contrast to the weight of expectation pressing down on her. The thick air buzzed with murmurs, a restless tide of hope and fear. Shadows danced along the stone walls, flickering like the memories of ancestors who had once gathered here to share their stories. She stepped onto the makeshift platform, the wood creaking beneath her, each sound echoing her heart's steady rhythm. The flickering lanterns cast her face in warm hues, and for a moment she felt the pulse of centuries behind her, urging her on. This was not just her moment, it was theirs. Together they would reclaim what was lost. We are the voices of our past. Xanthe's voice rang through the dome, a clarion call against the encroaching shadows. She scanned the faces before her, some eager, others uncertain eyes darting like trapped birds. Our heritage is worth fighting for. It is not merely stone and story, it is our lifeblood. She stepped closer, her hands gesturing toward the intricate carvings that adorned the walls, each telling tales of resilience. A spark ignited within her, and she pressed on, her resolve hardening like steel. If we do not stand together, who will? The crowd shifted, a wave of whispers rising like a tide of doubt. Fists clenched, some people turned away, faces clouded with fear of change. Xanthe's heart thudded, each beat a reminder of the stakes. She inhaled deeply, drawing strength from the very air that had cradled generations. This is not just about us, it is about our children, their children. We owe it to them to fight. The words flowed from her, a river of passion, but the unease remained, a thin veil over the fervor of her voice. Then a crash pierced the air, shattering the moment like glass. The entrance doors slammed open, the deep thud reverberating through the dome. Gasps rippled through the crowd, heads snapping around, eyes wide with alarm. Xanthe's breath caught, her words hanging mid-air like a fragile thread. What now? Panic flickered in her chest, a wildfire threatening to consume her resolve. She glanced back at the entrance, heart racing, uncertainty clawing at her throat. Had the moment slipped away? Was this the end of their fight before it had truly begun? The figure silhouetted in the doorway loomed larger than life, casting an ominous shadow over the crowd. Fear, raw and electric, coursed through the assembled islanders, tightening their unity into a fragile thread. Xanthe steadied herself, ready to face whatever emerged from the darkness. A question hung in the air, unspoken yet urgent. Would they rally together or scatter like leaves in the wind? The weight of their heritage pressed against her chest, an unyielding reminder of what. As dusk descended on the dome of knowledge, Xanthe Yarrow stood resolute at its center, her heart racing with the urgency of their shared fate. The islanders, shadows of doubt flickering across their faces, filled the vast space, and each minute felt like a countdown. They needed to unite before the week ended, before the consequences of their inaction became permanent, uprooting their identities and burying their past. "We must protect our heritage," she called, her voice echoing against the ancient stone, a plea that surged through the crowd. They could not scatter like leaves in the wind, not now, not when the weight of history pressed down upon them. Xanthe scanned the sea of faces, her stomach twisting. Some islanders crossed their arms, skepticism etched deep in their brows. What if we lose ourselves? One elderly voice challenged, its tremor resonating through the crowd. Fear gripped her, threading through her thoughts like a venomous vine. She could almost hear the clock ticking, each second a reminder of the dwindling time. If they failed to stand together, they would lose more than just the cave, they would lose their very essence. She swallowed hard, the taste of iron filling her mouth, and pressed on. "This isn't just about the cave, it's about our stories, our ancestors," she implored, desperation lacing her words. A ripple of discontent surged through the crowd, a mixture of fear and anger. "You speak of unity, but what of individuality?" Another voice barked, igniting murmurs of agreement.
Xanthe's pulse quickened, a race against time. She felt the heat rising in her chest, the pressure mounting. "We can honor our past and embrace our future," she shouted, her voice slicing through the tension. But with each word, doubt seeped back in, threatening to unravel her resolve. Her gaze fell on the distant horizon, where the last light of day surrendered to night. 3 days left, just 3 days to convince them before everything they held dear was lost to the void. She took a breath, steadying her racing heart. "Think of those we've lost, the stories waiting to be told. If we don't act now, they will fade into nothingness." The urgency thickened in the air, a palpable force, but still the hesitation lingered. The clock was ticking, and the weight of their collective silence bore down on her, suffocating her hopes. Xanthe's words hung in the silence, an echo of possibility. She reached deep within herself, feeling the stirring of determination. "Together we can write a new chapter," she declared, her voice unwavering. One by one she saw their expressions shift, fear melting into resolve. The islanders were beginning to nod, soft murmurs of agreement threading through the crowd like a lifeline.